Test one, two. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm Kat. I am the co-working manager here at Studio 45. I'd like to welcome you to Hero Note launch today. And I just want to say a shout out to our Kickstarter founders, or excuse me, sponsors. Been running around a little today. But I'd like to pass the microphone off to Greg, and he'll give you some more info about the event tonight.
Thank you, Kat. Yeah, thank you guys for coming out. How are we on the volume? I'm pretty loud. Yeah, okay. So this is an event of the Hardware Collective. So we've got the largest groups in the Bay Area all together putting on monthly events. This is our 7th, I believe. And I'm not sure, all of you that signed up through the Eventbrite page, that's how you can find us, learn about the future events, so you can keep in touch. That includes the East Bay Hardware Startup, Oakland, two San Francisco meetups, the whole shebang. So it's really the whole crew getting together to put these on, which includes, hey Kyle, actually while you're there, come on up, talk a little bit about Portland. So
yeah, you bet. Sure. Thank you, Greg, for kicking this off. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I'm part of Port Labs, who is one of the 4 members of Hardware Collective. Studio 45 as well is also part of the Hardware Collective. We're just a bunch of co-working spaces and workshops around the Bay Area. So this was a great way for us to combine our efforts and host meaningful events that provide value to the builder community, which is all of us. So yeah, thanks again, Greg, and I look forward to learning about this, which you guys have put quite a bunch of work into. So I look forward to the discussion, yeah.
And then Circuit Launch is the 4th group, who's not here today, but they focus on robotics near the Oakland airport. I don't know if you've heard about them, but they've got a lot of cool stuff going on there. And I'm working with Jeff and Paul. You want to raise your hand? He's shy all of a sudden. Silicon Valley in your pocket, and we help startups around the world, and really governments and accelerators, to bring the program to them in places like Kazakhstan, where Jeff was just 5 feet away from the president last week, bringing innovation over there, and Austria, Vietnam, Africa. We bring a digital program as well as the mentorship and networking to those folks. And I was brought in as the hardware guy. So I have a company that does manufacturing for startups, Berkeley Sourcing Group. We've been around since 2005. And, did I lose it? Okay, good. We've worked with 1,000 startups across all kinds of technologies. We really specialize in DFM and then managing the production managing from prototype to production. So over that time, working with 1,000 startups, I've seen a lot of startups making the same mistakes and really following a lot of the software methodologies to try to bring hardware to market. And they're just so different. Hardware is not agile. It's not as big of a margin. You still have a lot of operating costs and your COGS and things. And so a lot of the methodologies that we are used to using in Silicon Valley, that you go to any startup sort of event and you're going to hear about, don't apply necessarily as well to hardware startups. And so I think this is about the 300th event that I've put on through Hardware Massive and Hardware Con, trying to share some knowledge about, how do we make those match, right? What kind of different methodologies do you need to employ? And this one we've been working on for quite some time now is our new approach to fundraising. So again, because hardware is different, it has some unique abilities to attach profit to investment return and risk. And typically, it's hard to raise money as a startup. There's a lot of risk. There's a high CapEx cost early on. You don't see revenue for a while. That revenue is, divided by, your COGS and other things. And it just takes a while to really get ramped up and going. And so the brainchild of this really was Jeff and Cal originally. Like, how can we build a new note for this industry that would fit a little better, offer better mechanisms, tie things together in a more friendly way, both for the startup and the investor, to help them come together. So what we are here to do tonight is to present this note to you for the first time. This is the first time we're launching this publicly. And we're really hoping to get your feedback. We'd love to hear your honest feedback, your honest questions. We want to use your information and concerns and everything else to improve this note, and so that we can launch it publicly in a few weeks after we have a chance to hear about it and make those updates. Anything I'm missing? Yes, we did already, but we would not be here tonight without Kickstarter sponsoring us. So they've always been a big supporter, continue to be, and a great path to market, to match those early stage funds to getting things going. I think I covered all the basic stuff. Let's get into it. Do we have Matt here? Is Matt okay? Okay, great. I was just worried I might have lost you, but
No.
I'll go through the beginning here. So Matt is the lawyer genius who really put all the details together, and he's going to go through the hard part. I'm going to talk about how cool it is, and we'll see how that all goes at the end. So, disclaimer, did you want to talk about this at all?
Oh yeah. By the way, I'm not your attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just kind of telling you about this. If you think it is, you're wrong.
So a couple of reasons why fundraising for hardware startups is so hard, right? Is that you have all of these CapEx costs early on before you're making revenue. There are tremendous complexities in not only the manufacturing and getting from prototype to production. You also have safety, you have durability issues, you have time lost in shipping, you have complexities of distribution. You have potential containers falling off of boats, right? There's a lot more unknowns when you're dealing with physical products than there are when you're going to a website. And I love the software guys where, everything went wrong. I had to stay up all night and fix the problem. It's like, and you still have those costs of the goods, right? So you're never going to quite hit those profit margins. The exit multiples are smaller for electronics companies. Exit multiples average around 3x. So something to keep in mind when you're looking to scale. And this last one is really a lot of the impetus for why we built this note. And how is that, a lot of the startups I've worked with, they have a great product. It was a great idea. They have a market. They can be the best product in the market, and they have a trajectory, and it's very compelling. But they're not ever going to be a 100 million ARR company, or they're never going to reach that kind of unicorn status that particularly Silicon Valley investors are looking for in the venture capital, right? So immediately you're not in that conversation, right? If you're not making you don't have the opportunity to make more than 40 million ARR, then you're likely not going to have a shot with a VC unless you have some other abilities there, or other plans around a brand or platform or so forth. But they could, $40 million a year is not a bad lifestyle, right? So how do you get that product funded and to market in a way that makes sense? And that was kind of the thinking that we brought to creating this note. No, that's, maybe software is harder than it.
See, you said that, and now it's punishing.
Software guys there. Hey. There we go. All right. But if you turn it off and turn it back on again. So the uniqueness, so I'm going to talk about the high-level general ideas of the note. Matt's going to go into the real guts of how the mechanisms work. But what's really unique about this is that we've connected this note, the investment potential, to the actual units sold. And this is actually a model I've used myself and love to use the most, if I can, in new businesses, as far as, hey, friends and family or angel investor, I will give you a high percentage of my first monies in, and then a long tail equity option, so that we're really, I feel it really connects the value and the partnership very well, right? The investor is not taking money out while the business still needs it. The startup is giving money back as soon as that is feasible, while keeping enough money in the business to keep that growth pattern going. So this is an alternative way for investors to get a share of those profits. We've built it in such a way that it can convert into more traditional notes. So everything that we've done here, even though it's not been done before and is a different approach, it is able to be rolled into priced rounds and other options, and that's where it gets interesting. Matt will cover more of that. It also, there's a lot of flexibility as far as the unit range, the profit percentages, the maturity date, and certain things that allows a startup and investor to a little more flexibility to find a sweet spot that they can come together on. So, let's see if this magic works. Get some interesting colors. Okay, we'll keep it here for now. So this note is really suitable for those companies that are more lifestyle businesses. If you can go the VC route, if you're able to get those types of notes, then that's probably going to be right for both parties. Go that direction. That's great. Investors know it. They're comfortable with it. That will do the job. But if you're not, if you're having problems raising that money, or if you are not going to hit those kinds of milestones, then this is a note as an alternative. It's also great for companies that say you need an initial investment, but after that you expect to be cash flow positive, and you're not looking, you're looking for that angel round kind of money, $100,000, where, hey, great, I don't want to give up a ton of equity, but I need to get going. This is the only way. I need to get that money. And once I get it, I'm going to give you a nice return, but I'll get to keep more equity. So there's flexible options around that. What I really like is it also opens up a whole new avenue of contract manufacturers investing in your product. Because lots of investors don't know how complex hardware is, and that's why they stay away a lot of times. But contract manufacturers, at least they have a comfort level with your design and the ability to produce the product. They know the costs better than you do, probably. And they can be a great partner, right? To have a contract manufacturer that's really invested and committed to making your product work, that can incentivize them to do things maybe a little bit more correctly than they were planning to, or otherwise. You're really tying yourselves together. And if they do it in kind, then they also get to, they get tooling at cost, right? So that margin turns into equity on their part for no extra cost. So there's a lot of advantages that this note provides to contract manufacturers in particular, to allow that to be another option. Oh, now we're scrolling. All right. Okay. So to the good part here. So what we've done here is I've tried to make a very simple example of how this can work. And I'm really putting the cart before the horse because we haven't even introduced the note or anything. But I think it's important that you see it this way, because these are the guts. This is really where it all comes down to. And everything else, all the other mechanisms kind of make it flexible enough to work in the real world and provide those options. So if we look here, So this example is a startup we've been advising some, Altez Golf. He has a golf rangefinder that opens up like a camcorder so that it's easier to find the pin. Because if your hands are shaky or your eyesight is not very good, it can be hard to find the pin with a rangefinder. So great, right? Brand new idea. Seems like it could have a very nice niche in the market. The founder is very savvy as far as taking products to market. He's done it for many other companies. He's got great relationships with manufacturers. He knows the costs. He knows the rough price in the market. So the costs say around $100 or $50 per unit, and the retail price is going to be $400 to $450. He needs about $100,000 to get it going, though, for tooling and a first run of about 1,000 units. So how this is set up is that the James, in this case, at Altez Golf, is committing to say that for the unit range sold between 1,001 and 2,000 units, a total number of 1,000 units, I am going to give you, investor, 50% of the estimated profit per unit. Comes out to $50 a unit. Over the total range, that will be $50,000. Yeah. The only part that really matters here, though, and this is the tricky part, I think, and want to make sure we get this across, is that you're promising a return on each unit sold in this range that was going to add up to this. It doesn't matter what your actual profit is. You're not committing to anything around that. It doesn't matter what percentage of the profit that is. The only thing in the contract that is deliverable is the dollars per unit up to a total. And the reason that's important is because you won't know this stuff very well in the beginning. You might get it wrong. We're taking out all of that uncertainty and saying, okay, it doesn't really matter what the ultimate profit is. You may need to give some away, right? There's going to be lots of questions. But for any sold unit, you are going to pay the investor back this amount. So it's very clean. Everybody knows what they're getting. But it also ties it to what you expect and only when the units are sold. So you're not paying this when you don't have the money. You receive the money, and then you'll pay out the investment return. And then you can split that up by different unit ranges, right? So you'll notice that 0 to 1,000 is missing here, right? So if James says, hey, I need that profit from the first 1,000 units to invest in marketing, to hire a sales guy, to get things moving, then he can say, I'm not going to start paying back until the 1,001st unit. Or maybe it's the second 1,000 unit, right? That part is all very flexible. You can play around with that. So between, the unit range, the dollars per unit, and then the total setup here, there's a lot of flexibility for the startup to present different avenues and for the investor and startup to get together and find something that works for both parties. I'm going to stop here and see, does anybody have any questions about this so far?
Hold on, microphone, please. Thank you.
How is this different from a royalty deal? Like on Shark Tank, there are these royalty deals offered by that Mr.
It's very similar. It's very similar. The difference, I'd say the main differences are that things are a little bit more clarified. There's more flexibility in the ranges and different things. But probably most importantly is all of the work that Matt did to make it more attractive to the startup, I'd say, in that the way that this is set up is if you use the Hero Note, you can still be converted into a priced round. There's a little bit more flexibility. It still acts as a convertible note, such that it plays a little bit better in the market and with traditional investment mechanisms. But the fundamental idea is very, very much the same.
How do you pay back the principal, or when?
Let me, sorry, I probably asked for questions too soon. I apologize. We are going to get into that, but you would pay back the investment profit when that is made on those units after you've received the money. The principal is due on the maturity date that you decide. So the maturity date is the other factor that you would define in the contract. Yeah.
I mean, maybe you'll cover this later, but then what happens if you can't afford to pay it at the time of maturity? And are there covenants as well?
Yeah, I think maybe Matt can get more into that, but similar to any debt mechanism, right? This is a risky investment, right? You're investing in a hardware startup. And, these things, I wanted to hit on, these are the realities, right? And we're not changing any of this. All of this is still very true. It's still going to be very hard to bring a product to market. And there is a high risk that these won't get paid back, as many convertible notes don't get paid back. And then the details of how you work that out can be negotiated. Okay, I think it's time to hand off to the guru here. Or any last questions?
Yeah, as part of a startup, you might go through several rounds of product market fit. So what if you started out with one product and you say, hey, we're actually going to go to a higher end product or a different product? Is that rolled into the note at all as kind of the company evolves?
That is a great question, and it is not currently. Yeah, this really ties the sales of the product that was defined. So if you're building a whole new product, then that would be something different. But if you're making iterations, and maybe Matt, you can chime in on this, but if you're making iterations, I would expect that would fall under the umbrella.
So in reality, what would end up happening is when you're doing your next funding round, you're clearing out these notes. And so in reality, this early note, you never pay on any of it, most likely. It's kind of like those little nesting dolls. Like, one assumes all of the other ones. So in the next one, you just modify your stuff and you're issuing under new units that you'd be selling. So in reality, no one cares. Yeah. So in reality, this is just a convertible note. Who knows what a convertible note is? Awesome, my life is a lot easier. All right, for you guys, it's a convertible note with some modifications, some tweaks, some really cool stuff. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's a way for an investor to put money in, instead of getting an interest rate, he's getting a fixed amount, as Greg was talking about. And the unique part is it can be rolled into another hero note, which is the fun part here. So again, we get rid of the interest rate and we add in profit sharing based on units. Yeah. How do you get it to go? Oh, there we go. All right. So just a refresher on what a convertible note is for everyone that didn't raise their hand. It's a method for an investor to purchase equity before a priced round, not using a safe note. And so the difference between a convertible note and a safe note is a convertible note is a debt instrument. So it's actually debt until it converts, whereas a safe note is an equity instrument. It's like potential equity sitting out in the ether. It's great for startups, bad for investors. So it's a debt instrument. You're loaning money, you're getting interest, its ability to convert at the priced round, and you have a cap or a discount that governs how it converts at a price point. So Between the convertible note and the hero note, you still have the ability to do either a discount or a cap on it. You can do both. You can do one, you could do the other, doesn't matter. It's built to where you can literally just plug and play those terms into it. The types of conversions, this is where it gets different. So generally there's 3 different types of conversions that you would have in a convertible note. Return of the loan plus interest at the maturity date. So you never actually got to your price round, you have money, you pay it off, and everyone's happy. Number 2, it converts to common shares at any point or at the sell of the company, or there's lots of different trigger events that could happen, but it converts into common shares. And the last one is it gets converted into preferred shares at the price round. So the difference is the hero note isn't meant to be held until the price round. It is meant to be held until your different stages. And so Greg has built it out to where there's 3 different stages of like manufacturing. And so at each one of those stages, you create a new hero note and you're selling off all of you're getting rid of the other ones, or at least getting rid of the principal. I would highly recommend that you keep the profit piece if you want, because it's free. It's free. You don't need to pay it off until those units are sold. So it doesn't behoove you unless you really want to clear it off. So rolling into the next round, converts at a price round. So let's say you hit it big, everything's going great, you don't need to raise any money, and eventually you get to a price round. You raise your big round. It can just convert into equity, or it can be converted into the next hero note. Earnings on the loan. So generally a convertible note, you have an interest rate and it's due at the maturity date or at conversion. With the hero note, it's a fixed amount based on unit sales. So you and the investor get to figure out, okay, you're gonna loan me $100,000. How much do I need to pay you later in time for that $100,000 now? And you get to figure out what units in the future. So it could be unit million, and from 1 million to 2 million, if you can convince someone. Like, it can be any number you want. So that's the beauty of this. You get to literally put a timeline, like whatever unit you want at the end. The next thing is, if you do get to a price round, you can convert all of that debt into something else. Or the beautiful thing is, you can pay it all off without the investor's consent. So if the investor doesn't want to roll it into another hero note, your investors in the next round can clear out your previous round. And that's the beauty of it. Like, so if your investors are like, no, I don't want to follow on, I just want my money back, great. Or, you could just hold it until it gets closer to the maturity date and clear it off in 2 rounds. Like, and this is where negotiating those terms of how far your maturity date out is, what units you're promising is very important. The further out you get it, the better off you are, because that gives you time to get further along, raise more money, clear off those when it's not such a big deal for you. Or the investor's like, hey, like, this is going great. Let me take my money and let me keep, it's like craps. You keep rolling on all of everything that you're winning. And so hopefully these investors are gonna keep rolling with you because you're doing such a great job. If not, you clear them off and you say goodbye and you bring in new people that actually believe in you. So I'll take questions at the end. So let's go. Cool. So benefits. One, it should be an easier way for you to raise, because investors should know exactly what they're going to be getting, and it's tied to an actual unit. And one of the things that I've actually been thinking about since everyone's been talking and asking me questions about this is actually tying the principal to units being sold as well. and being able to do that, not just having this balloon payment at the maturity date, but tying the whole thing to units sold. So that's one of the things that we might explore in version 2 of this, is give you guys the ability to not have this giant balloon payment at maturity date, but actually tie the whole thing to fixed things. The other big thing is this is a clear path for you guys to pay off this loan with, like, hey, I'm going to sell this unit and here's money. Sell this unit, here's money. And so that's a nice way that de-risks for the investor, because as long as you get to selling the units that you've promised, they're going to make their money back. And if you did a good enough job with your predictions, you should only be eating some of your profit margin, not into your actual operating budget. And the beauty of the Hero Note is hopefully you're clearing off the previous, like your first version, you're going to be wrong with your predictions. I guarantee it. But the thing is, hopefully it's far enough out that it never actually happens to where you're paying those. You've cleared them off, and the next version, you're getting a better picture. You've readjusted your margins, and you're getting it tighter to what closer to reality. And each time you're doing this, you're getting better and better to where you finally get to your last Hero Note, your third version of it, and it should be dialed in. So if you don't get to a price round and you don't clear it off, and you just have to pay it off based on the terms, you should be okay. So that's the beauty of this, is you don't have to be right on day one. You just have to be close enough that an investor's like, yeah, I'll give you money. And the other thing is this allows you to restructure your debt. Whereas a convertible note, safe notes, all of these other things, there's no restructuring in it. You get one bite at the apple and you're done. With all of this, you're paying off all of this debt and you're getting new debt. And so you get new terms, better terms as you keep scaling as a business. And so investors, it's just the same stuff, but on the opposite. Because we're tying this more to reality, everyone's happier with the outcomes of these things. It's not saying that there's not a risk, because a lot of startups fail. But if you do make it, or you do get even just mild success and get to sell units, there's a good chance that people are going to get paid. All right, now I'll take questions.
So, sorry. So if you have an investor deciding to, or that you want to buy out an investor before you ship any units, when you're buying them out, is it for the principal only, or is there a minimum return that you need to give them at the same time?
So the minute you sign it, you have to pay back the whole thing. Like you're guaranteeing, so on that example, I think it was 160K in profits. So whatever you got loaned, let's say it's 500 and you're giving him 160, you owe him 660 regardless of when you pay it back. If you pay it back in a month, you still owe him 160. Unlike a convertible note that's interest-based, so the longer you hold it, the more money you owe him, it's fixed. So the goal is for you to hold, like you can hold it as long as you need.
So yeah, just to clarify, so you're responsible for the principal plus the 160. So if that was $100,000 loan, then and those are the interest return, then 260 would be the final.
Got it. That makes sense. And then the other question is, I assume the rights are the same as a regular convertible note. So the rights are with the investor to convert at any time, and the trigger events for conversion that the company benefits from are a qualified financing and all these other things that you enumerated. But most of the rights rest with the investor in terms of choosing when to convert.
So yes, most of the conversions are exactly the same as a convertible note. The only difference that I built into this is the ability to pay back either the profit or the principal. You can pay back either one at any time. You can pay back some, you can pay back it all. You can clear it all off. You can hold one of them until whatever. So that is the one big power that the startup has.
Until the maturity date.
Yes,
And
well,
then
until they're actually due.
Yeah.
Like you have to pay it back at maturity date or when you start selling units. But you always have the ability to prepay. There's no penalty for prepaying because unlike with a convertible note, it's interest, so it's fixed. The investor wants to get to the preferred round or to the preferred shares. In this, with the first hero note, you're not getting to preferred shares. You're going to have to reissue another note, and you're going to have to keep following on to get there.
Microphone, please. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks. How is the product on which you're returning profit defined? As in, if you're starting with product A and you have a plan for a follow-on product B, the hero note would be anchored to product A, though you might sell way more of product B. Would there be any teeth in product B in that context?
No.
And what if you never make product A?
Sucks for the investor. But the reality is most of the time, like, hey, you have this hero note, you still owe them the money. Like, granted, if you never produce product A, I guess you never get to selling those units. So the profit margins would be...
Then you just return...
You have to return the principal. But the reality is, like, let's say you're developing product A, and then you're like, shit, product A isn't really going to work. We need to switch to product B. Well, you have that hero note. Most likely, you're going to clear that hero note, and it's going to roll into the second hero note, where you're now going to define it as product B.
But that's kind of a matter of goodwill unless you need the capital.
Let's just say any investor, like future investor, would not be happy, and like I would not recommend pissing off one investor over that.
Just entertaining the hypothetical.
Theoretically, yes. If you never make product A and you let it sit out there forever and ever, you could. But that investor probably isn't going to be very happy and will badmouth you to every other investor in the market because it's a small community. So
Makes sense.
First of all, this reminds me a lot of like the SVP model, where there's kind of a waterfall payout. If you were building more than a lifestyle business where you're coupling each of these to a product, but then building an underlying factory that would be able to do that, how would that then work out where there's then coupled assets to multiple different hero notes that would, in like a liquidation preference, how could that be structured?
So we purposely did not put any security into we didn't securitize this note.
Okay.
So this is just an unsecured debt just like any convertible note. So you're in line with all of the other like debt holders that aren't secured.
Okay.
So there's no waterfall. There's no I get preference over someone else. I didn't build any of that in because I didn't want there to be a pissing war with investors.
Okay. And my second question would be, if you were to raise this money and then for a new business which doesn't necessarily have like credit to the business, would you be able to then use that to underwrite like machine financing?
Say that one more time.
So like, could you go to a like machine lender and like get a loan for a like expensive machine?
Yes.
Okay.
Like what would end up happening is they would lend you money, you'd pay them for the machine, and then you would just owe them money, and this would be on what they would end up with at the end of the day.
But this would essentially, would this provide credit to the company that a bank could look at the company and say that they have the money to pay them, and so that you could basically buy the leverage to get the machines you need to get to the units that you need to produce? So if I was going to go buy like an injection molder that's $500,000, but I'm only raising 100,000, but I would be paying 14 grand a month to have the injection molder, like would the bank be able to look at the company that has raised this note to be able to say that this is something that they can then buy?
I don't think so. Yeah, because you're think of this as a way to get $100,000.
Yeah.
You only have $100,000. The note is worthless. It's actually debt sitting on your books. So,
But with that $100,000, could I pay 14 grand a month to own a injection molder?
if someone's willing to do that, then sure.
Yeah,
Like I don't know enough about the industry where someone would sell you a $500,000 machine for 100,000, like
Would be leasing.
lease it. Leasing probably sounds right, but yeah, you could, like, if they're willing to do that, but you have $100,000 in your pocket. Think of it as that way. Like, if you can utilize $100,000 to get a piece of equipment, then yes. If no, then no.
Okay. So this doesn't reinforce the financeability of the company from a bank's perspective.
No.
Okay.
Like, unless the bank's like, oh yeah, these other people were willing to give me money, you should also loan me money. But that most banks don't usually do that on this small of thing. Usually we're talking like a lot of the banks that I know, like if you raise $5 million, they will also tag on $5 million worth of debt. And that will be something that happens. But that is usually the smallest amount that I've ever seen a bank do.
Okay, but this is just debt. So
This is just straight debt.
okay.
Technically. So you are promising, hey, you're gonna give me $100,000, and I'm promising you 100 plus whatever we agreed on as the profit.
Okay. Makes sense.
There a couple questions on how the rollovers work. So one is just when you're rolling over from one hardware or one Hero Note to another. Just I was wondering if you just kind of walk through like what happens with the money in those cases. And then the second one was if you were to go into like a price round and it was to convert into equity. Is the structure of that like what equity you would receive and the cap on that or how that's valued? Is that related to the principal and the the amount that the profit that you're paying back, or is that a different part of the agreement?
So it's like whatever is outstanding on the note. So your principal plus the profit, whatever you haven't paid back, would be converted into preferred shares at the cap rate or discount rate, just like any other convertible note, safe note, whatever, right? Can you ask your first question again?
Yeah, the first question was just you mentioned that you can sort of roll one Hero Note into the next.
Okay.
I'm just curious, like how the money moves in that case.
So in this previous example, I think it was $100,000 loan, and he was getting 100,000 plus 160.
Yeah, and we've thought about this part for a while, which I should probably go into more depth. Hardware startups are risky, right? So you may need to give back, a 1x, 2x kind of return within a couple of years, which is any investor would be thrilled with those kind of returns, right? But there's a huge chance of failure as well. So we, thinking about it a little bit, put up those numbers. And for James, with his product, hey, this is a lifeline, right? This is a chance for him to really make a company, make a big business and get going. And if it doesn't work, him and the investor are on the same page. He tried, there's everything was on the level and easy to understand. But yeah, it could, you might need to think about bigger numbers than definitely a 10% return. This is not traditional investing.
So let me answer his first.
I'll get back to you.
So in his example, the total debt is 260, right? So the investor could roll that 260 into another note where, hey, that 260, you're now adding on another section of, let's say, 75K of debt to keep that up to roll it into the next one, or whatever the conversion. But most likely what you're trying to do is you're taking that 260 and you're going to them and being like, hey, do you want to put another 500 into this? Cool. I'm going to roll your 500 plus your 260 into 760, and I'm going to turn that into one Hero Note as your principal, and then I'm going to add on the profit to it. And so that's what you would roll into the next one. Or let's say that investor doesn't want to roll it into the next one. Someone's willing to give you 760. You take 260 of that, you pay off the other guy, and you've technically rolled that 260 into the next round with that investor. That investor's bought out one of your previous ones and put in a fresh 500 into it. So the way, these numbers start getting big for this investor. Like at the end of the day, they start getting like a fatty return that's sitting there. And so that's why you got to be really careful with the units and spacing this out and being better at your guessing. But realistically, all you're doing is selling off part of your profit margin in like the next 5 years of your product is where you're getting to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But it sounds like that profit margin portion of the repayment rolls into principal when you convert, when you do a new note.
Exactly.
Got it.
So, but hopefully you're getting better terms on the next one. Like your cap is getting increased. The amount of like your principal loan to how much profit you're having to give away, that ratio is getting better and better each round because you're getting closer and closer to a good, like a functioning company. And so at the beginning, your ratios are going to be really shitty. As you go through each round of this, you should be improving your ratios and you're getting better financing terms on all of this.
Got it.
I think you answered my question earlier. I was kind of curious about what the going rate for debt is among, say, a contract manufacturer, but I think you've addressed that. Do you have any advice?
Whatever you want. Like that's the nice thing about this is because it's not an interest rate. There's no. So when it comes to interest rates and borrowing, there's called usury, and so therefore, like, there's limits. With this, there's not so like. There's no limit because it's not an interest rate. It is, hey, I'm loaning you this money, and I'm securing these things.
Exactly. And on the flip side of that is, as a startup founder, at what point are you thinking that if you roll it into a second round, could you expect like to pay half the amount in profits or that you had previously paid? I'm kind of curious how that plays out as you're being more successful.
I don't know is the answer. Like until this starts getting used and we see what the market is actually willing to support, I have no freaking clue. I'm just the guy that built it.
It's very different for every product. And it's a huge range. And partly because of the risk, there's a bigger range, right? You need to kind of be willing to give more. And so it really, I think, balances. And the stages that we were looking at were fundamentally getting into production, so tooling and startup costs, and then you get into market, and then you're growing, right? And interesting with hardware that most people don't think about is that you actually can often get into a cash crunch the most when you're very successful because of payment terms. You're not receiving the money from the products that you're selling early enough to place an order with the factory to make that next run. So you become wildly successful, and all of a sudden you just owe everybody a ton of money.
By the way, this is where banks come in critical. Having a good bank that's going to, like, because you sold something, you can get receivable, like loans on receivables and all these things. I highly recommend that you have a solid bank that's got you a line of credit based on your receivables that you can utilize, because otherwise you get into exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah, and banks were a big part of this too that we haven't talked too much about, but it's a new opportunity. You owe folks some money on maybe some, tough terms, but now, hey, you're successful, things are going well. You can take out a bank loan at a much more reasonable rate, get that all paid out, and have that long tail.
Yeah, SBA is another, like when you start getting to actual profitability, having enough of that to get an SBA, you can clear off a lot of this at decent rates. So there's other way, like there's the way to pay this back and get rid of this debt is hugely different. Like you could get VCs, you could get people that act like you can convert it into equity. You can do lots of different things to clear this off and make it successful without having to pay it all back necessarily.
Is it structurally necessary for this note for there to be a one-to-one relationship between notes and products, or would it be possible to modify it to have a product A, product B, product C in a roadmap and have those all tied into one note?
Yeah, you could do that.
You could do that, and the paperwork will include an obvious way of doing so, or it would
No.
just be one clause multiplied out a few times.
Never thought about this. No one told me I needed to build this. So not yet, but it wouldn't be difficult to build that in. It would be a couple, like I'd have to modify like clauses, and then in that little grid that we showed, you just have to add in a line for product A, product B, product C, and you would have different ones for those units.
I think that there's a significant niche within hardware of companies that don't necessarily have high tooling costs, but need capital to scale. But once the product A is built, can build product B and product C kind of in a follow-on sense within months with relatively low capex. And I think that from the perspective of an investor, that would kind of help avoid the circumstance that I was articulating initially.
I think you're completely correct. I think that it would be an excellent addition to it.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll do our last question here because we've got a whole panel to discuss this a little bit more.
Oh, well, now I feel terrible because it's not entirely a question. But just rolling on to that, we're a CM, and I would say that 3 out of 5 companies that we are engaging with at the early stages, their entire plan is only to make 1,000 or 5,000 units of version 1, strictly to get it in the market, to get attention from investors, where all their money is going to be made on product 2, 3, 4, 5. And they know that from the get-go. So that would be an incredibly valuable addition to the
definitely
note.
something we need to add in is, I'm assuming, is the ability, like what I'll probably end up doing in this version is in the next version, what we'll do is we'll literally have you literally just copy and paste in the definition section, product A, product B, product C, and then you just add the description of each product into it. So it's an easy thing to fill in, and then you just fill in the table properly.
Probably some goodwill.
Yeah, it's not like this is this, like I literally just need to make a couple minor changes, and it does exactly what you're thinking. And I think it's necessary for this market. And if you don't have more than one product, you just delete product A or product B and C.
Okay, we are going to have a panel to jump into this. We didn't love the questions. Thank you guys. Really appreciate the feedback and hearing from you. Why don't we take a quick bathroom break, grab some water or what have you, and we'll start up again here in just a few minutes.
Connor, by the way.
Hey, Connor.
Terry, our